Sanje Chedan Soji Chona La Chanchu Badu Tane Jesu Tagu Chijin Jewe Zona Je Adrola Benje Sanje Drubo Jo Sanje Chedan Soji Chona La Chanchu Badu Tane and Tagu Chijin Jewe Zona Je Adrola Benje Sanje Drubo Jo Sanje Chedan Soji Chona La Chanchu Badu Tane Jesu Tagu Chijin Jewe Zona Je Adrola Benje Sanje Druba Sho Ladana Memedam Ji Amboda Jajina Choji Chola Chava Chava Sanje Sumbara to Jijin de Juru Juba Jada Jiji and Bichin Diriji Jiri Jesavi Diriji Tenje Chebatella Chodo Tajo Ye De La Veneja Susa made Ambedani Lavatula Tuve Sunya Namo La Yekatan Nejinga Dumuda Miyakan and the Drovakunjan of Jisa Bottom Jacket to Dagi Do Ya Nanita Azuri Drum Church Jaoki. Ani Mosakani Deni Sum to do. Ani Tabasim Pusum Jeter, Zevaye, Kadam Renji, Seji Chingwandi, and Drova Kangi Jana to Juru Jenny. Oh, that's one I say Jenny. Ani Jumden Jaji, any Chuzu Chenji Sumba, Ka, a Chubun Jadi Sumba Tanje. Ani Duna, Ani Denisum to do, Mosakani Denisum to do. Oh, that. Denisum Gagi, Ani Jujiki, Ne Tamje, Ani Kawar Dure, Sana, Ani Jusum Yelam Yerbaladua. Oh, Jusum Yelam, Denisum to Dam Yamba Jusum Yezeba Yin, say. Gadam Rinji, Seji Chewandi, Ani Drova Kangidana, Juru, say, Gana, Ani Jusum Yelam Yamsu Lendru. Ani Yami Cho Chebuki, so the Bane, so the Lamji Jamaki. Oh, Tendawi, Ani Lamji Voyage. And Drova Kangi, Ani Yamsulana, turn to Bajua in down, Drova Kangi down, turn to Jenny this one, but
So the great Kadam master Jomdun Gyawich Chune said that all of the teachings of the Buddha, all of the marvelous teachings of the Buddha that one finds throughout the three collections of the speech of the Buddha, the teachings on the three baskets or collections of the Buddha's teachings, all of these can be subsumed or contained within the explanations that are given in the way in which a person is led through the path of the three types of persons of lesser, intermediate, and greater scope. And thus, the great master Atisha basically extracted the entire essence of the three baskets, the entirety of the Buddha's teachings, and summarize them within his great text on the lamp for the path to awakening. And so there's a verse that Dromdunba has taught which expresses that, and it says that the entirety of the marvelous teachings of the Buddha are contained in this exposition by Lord Atisha.
Oh yeah, that then we do some say I love the so I need to chungudang, to dindang, I need to chambo say gana, or that in or Sanju Lamjin Bala, Lord and Bash into Jangarjina, and it tambo to chung the Tumuna la Lochang. Then you drink the Tumuna la Lochang. Then I need to Chimbila la Rimji, Lochangoa. That number you some do see in body. That and then the regime will gaso, I need to do Jacanis Sungo Re Sanigala, and Georgia Tela, Undo Dangeli Sanigale. Oh, Undo Duchetang, tap down, and then really do check it up, Sani. Or that does to go away. Then Undo Duchet and really do check it up, ni Ginala, and it goes to Lamjir, but man does tang go away. So, oh, Kashitami, Kandaki, Koyu, there was some dela. Ani Rani turned to near, but you would in a Tamashi, Chani, so on, I say, Channel. Ani Lamjun Gaso. Or Ani Jawachima, Undo, Samu combat turned to near the Ani Casore, teach to Ani Bam Mikachubong to the Sushi to Song at the that is taken by the Kashi Tamni, Tadaki, Koyin, there was some Koyi, there was some Tala, give up pins only then Pison Sawaji, Yon Shido, Ani tender on the Drubjegi, Jew, Ani Sudim, Megajubong Sudim Lavgate, that you chewing on the Stusungare, that and then Diang, Anangele. Ondo tangele ni jinanya ondo dujede aralu la sumba na shin chene o jewa chima ondi samyu den tobi chido ani mi ge jobong go chudum la lo betela ondo duje che.
So just as Lord Atisha has explained the three types of persons and the practices that pertain to the three types of persons, the person of lesser scope, intermediate scope, and greater scope. He's explained the entirety of the Buddha's teaching in that kind of format and presented in that sort of systematization. And similarly, here in the Precious Garland, the Master Nagarjuna has presented the same essential topics, but he's done so in a slightly different arrangement, where he's presented it in terms of the methods for achieving a form of rebirth first, and the causes for achieving that, a good sort of condition within a higher form of life, high status within the world, as one stage. And then after that, he explains also the way in which one achieves the highest good of liberation and perfect awakening and so forth. So, and all of the methods by which one achieves those sorts of goals as well. So the sort of topics and the practices that you find in the stages of the path sort of systematization of the Buddha's teaching, in which you find the three persons presented, is just as comprehensively covered here within the Ratnavali or the Precious Garland of Nagarjuna, such that because all of the same material is presented simply in a slightly different arrangement. So here he begins with the practices for the achievement of high rebirth or high status, is the way I'm going to translate the Ngunto, high status. In the translation here, it's called elevation, but I'm going to translate that as high status. And the practices there are just like what you find in the stages of the path kind of arrangement, where the person of lesser scope is primarily concerned with the achievement of happiness within the world, and therefore engages in the avoidance of the 10 kinds of non-virtuous activities. And by avoiding non-virtue, one then creates the cause for high forms of rebirth. This is also presented here in fundamentally the same fashion in the precious garland of Arya and Nagarjuna.
Oh yeah. Anita, is it a caso? Ani, nearly Dubjetela. Anita, caso de Jusum Tanya Madana. Ani nearly Dubjetela, nearly Tabaduja Tabdan. Nearly Tamji Chamba Duja Tamni Yebenane. Ani, Koyudunga, what a shiwi. Ani, oh, she was turned to Nyawaki, Jew drink a lamb down. 아니 탐제체 버튼도냐 아니 교치벨람 22 상고야 말. 로와 오늘 주제게 탑대라. 내래 타르바 주제게 탐람당. 타바잠 주제게 람당. 아니 탐제체 버주제게 람니 전에.
라 녀렌 주제게 탑.
내래 주제테라. 내래데라 타르바다 탐제체 버니 어와. 내래 타바 주제게 람체나 주진 가시랑시 잠태니위 교우테니 진시차 세가라 라니 코유 동안 여와시 니시텐도니에디 니셰교와 인장엘레 셰교와 인장 파체나 안행엘레 주지기 교우등당 탐제체버 주지기 교우 첨부니 타냐마다에 봐도 딜라도 참고하레시.
So even though the terminology of the person of lesser, intermediate, and greater scope is not used in this particular text, the precious garland, nevertheless, all of the subject matter that you find in the lamrim or stages of the path is found completely presented in this text. So it presents the method, just as we mentioned already, the method for achieving high status within the world through the avoidance of the 10 kinds of non-virtuous behaviors. Likewise, for the achievement of nirvana, with the cessation of samsara, which is the complete, utter pacification and elimination of all of the mental afflictions, disturbing emotions, mental afflictions, and the peace which comes as a result of that eradication of the mental afflictions. That's explained here, and likewise, the methods by which one achieves the final, highest good of omniscience is also presented here as well. So the practices which are the primary or principal cause for the achievement of those 3 types of result, happiness in the world, nirvana, and omniscience, Buddhahood, these are all explained completely within this text as well. So it therefore covers all of the entire subject matter of the stages of the path, even though the terminology is not identical.
Oh yeah, 다디 원도 주제세야 대한 아니 개와 치마 아니 언제 동안 녀를 시와기 원도 삶이 그 공부한 때쯤 아니 토비 치도 아니 가서래 주바 마인바 아니 나르지 치위 도자가 냥수래 래 가서래 냥수래가 인장 르지 치위 치도 도자 대라 아니 저 준비라라 로장해지 고고와 인장 아니 단단 디고 원도 주제 태양 아니 라라리 뒤저나 소나 신천이 람조줄과 천이 참여 때 많이 봐줘 사지 명외 대 마자 매비 줄라라 고숨 디돈 전면 바와이 사발레주 정와 내세외 군도 도시 상와 담바 제천이 오다 소나 신천이 원도 삼이 아니 가서 안지 동안 여러 시비 원도 삼이 댄자 마인바 댄디 같은 돈이에데 내래 탐제 준비 공부한 토바 제발라 아니 토바를 제발라 탐제 준비 아니 토바를 제발게 아니 남지를 받았다 냠술 내고 남지를 받 냠술 내바 라양 아니 댄데 생이 상와지 고고와 인장 어더니 가서는 온도 제봐봐 어단다 어 너무 고만 주바기 아니 때 쳐봐자 온들이 된 텐데 기타 텐데 고거래.
So here, just as as is the case in the stages of the path, where when one is practicing the practices that relate to the person of smaller scope, you're not doing that just to achieve a good kind of rebirth. That's not the ultimate objective of those practices. Rather, you do those practices to achieve a good rebirth as a foundation or basis for the progress through the later stages of the path, with your ultimate objective being the achievement of Buddhahood. So the person of smaller scope in the stages of the path, or Lamrim text, sort of system, is actually not really trying just to achieve higher rebirth, but rather is doing that just as kind of a platform or a basis for progress onto the subsequent stages of the path. And and likewise, when one enters into the intermediate stages of the path, and one is attempting to achieve perfect liberation from samsara, the complete pacification of the mental afflictions, and the nirvana, which is the consequence of that kind of method, then one is seeking for that sort of nirvana, not as an end in itself, but rather is you're trying to you do that as a kind of stage of progress, so that with the ultimate objective being the final goal, the achievement of perfect omniscience, of the omniscience of Buddhahood. The same exact thing applies here to the precious Garland of Arya Nagarjuna, that when one is doing if one's the kind of person or disciple for whom the text is ultimately intended, then one engages in the basic practices, avoidance of the 10 kind of non-virtuous actions and so forth, the kind of practices that accomplish the higher status, high rebirth within the world. You do that just as sort of a means to the final end, which is the achievement of Buddhahood, just as is the case in the Lamrim, the stages of the path. So it's the same kind of procedure and overall intention of the text applies here, just as in the Lamrim.
Oh yeah, 근데 인자 다 주나 디 두절라 소와 나신 전에 양다 시종을 나한테 전단 남방에 주네. 당내 팀내 지된라 인제 군도见내 송 세가라. 오다 우마진가라 소와 나신 전에 양다비 시와 초왕 온도 통데. 당내 팀내 세가라. 안에 당전지 현유日本가데. 당전기 현유日本가데. 안에 다음에 배다와 또니. 다음에 배다와 또와라 때네. 안에 당전 보니스 참여주. 당전 보니스 참여주 발라 때네. 안에 당전 방바 여바 참여주. 아니 방바 여바 참여주 주발라 때네. 안에 어저비 찾주 돈이냐 왔더니 고고와래. 대고와 인자 만달 주나 아니 마란지 가소리 유라 아니 처음에 봐네 진에 지도 홍화기 이진남시 참모디 아니 가서 이진남시 참모당 되게 셈당 아니 셈기 취니 니가라 아라실레 치멜레바 마슈바 셈지 치마다 자루 인바 가서래人间나가 추다신 세전에 다 남주다와 쉬와 나시전에 어른버지라신라 마슈바다 세지라신라 야 마슈바다 취라신라 녀바 마슈바다 난가라신라 진 마슈바 벨라자니 아니 셈지라신라 치멜레바 마슈바 인장 아니 셈지 치마다 자롱 셈지 치마다 자와 제발라 청반다 자와라 제발 그냥 뭐 dob된 여봐 님보 덤된데 탑시 순제도 전에 양소 렘발라 때네 타를 아니 심지당 저마다 차비 차와지 여바당 조비 자주 생겨지 톱주 여바 오 텐데지 딱 고고요 아래 와 가설에 야원데
So this is it's the basic process here is explained elsewhere as well, and for example in the Madhyamaka Alankara, the ornament for the middle way, it explains how someone who requires intellectual understanding before they engage in the practice necessarily has to understand correctly the nature of selflessness, that the person is devoid of any kind of intrinsically existing self. And then based upon that kind of, once they gain that sort of understanding, there's no real absolute self within the person, then based upon that, they understand that it's possible to achieve liberation because of the fact that the mental afflictions which create samsara are grounded or founded on the misconception of the nature of the self, grasping at the self as if it was real in a way that it is not. And so such a person, once they understand that the self doesn't exist as it appears, and is actually the sort of the opposite of the way it appears, it's devoid of any kind of intrinsic nature, then they're able to realize that liberation is possible, and then once they understand that liberation is possible, they're able to make the inference that it's possible to achieve omniscience as well. And then in that sort of general process, they enter into the path, and then they proceed through it. Similarly, it's la gang di lason peishi orba di kasa chudang mari
人生能够出大心，出有上心了，用嘛修把它，是吧？安尼正经能够来，能够上心了，真嘛修把它，实际上心了也嘛修把。
So similarly, if we consider like the nature of our minds, and we think about the basic mental consciousness, which is sort of the fundamental consciousness that has a continuity, the subtlest form of sort of mental consciousness that has a continuity over from beginninglessly and continues onward. That sort of basal consciousness, subtlest form of mental consciousness, if one comes to understand its actual nature, one can see that that basal consciousness, or most subtle mental consciousness, is by its nature not infused with the mental afflictions. The mental afflictions are not part of the actual nature of that that subtlest mental consciousness that goes from life to life in a kind of continuous stream. Rather, the mental consciousness, the analogies or examples that are used for it are that it's like a precious jewel, that the very nature of it is not affected by any kind of contaminant that the jewel might be immersed in. Or similarly, it's like gold. Even if gold is covered with some kind of rust or corruption on top of the gold itself is not, its very nature is not affected by that contamination. And likewise, water, even if water is heavily polluted, the actual nature of the water is such that it is suitable to be separated from that kind of pollution. And finally, then the sky is, even if the sky is completely covered with clouds, the nature of the sky is not actually affected by the clouds. Those are just temporary, adventitious, sort of temporary things that appear. So similarly, our minds are like that. They have that kind of quality of being suitable to be free from the mental afflictions that adventitiously or temporarily obscure the nature of the mind.
Oh yeah, that tenderly didn't bonus bonus the much be dinzem. I know quite our dancing bonus chairman to dancing part bonus chairman to the gala. And it tends to tap on the Bamba 20 years. So we change 20 years. So we change to Tobala, one la, and the castle. So we 20 years, the Chetuchawa Kanga Chetu Re, China, and the same Benny Shandun Shirianda, so we change to the Shavigana, Shan, and the Dunga Judan Java, Troy Chetu, along so we change. 아니 전도녀와 연장 섬제시한 동아지 마사 동아지 나와라 미세비 인제 적거래 섬제시한 동아지 나와라 미세비 인제 제와라 라니 코와라 나와 집에 내주 적거래 어 현지 전도 딜레서 밀람트야 매매나 랑게 전도 텐디서 밀람트야 마매나 현지 전도 갈라게 세간 송하나 신전주 가서 현 동아지 나와라 미세비 인제 제와라 랑 거기 동아지 나와라 미세비 내주 적거라
So thus, once one understands that nature of the mind, its suitability to be free from the temporary mental afflictions, then one also comes to understand that the grasping at things as being real, which is the fundamental mental affliction, this sort of grasping at things as being real, as existing in a way in which they don't actually exist. They appear to exist in this way as being real, but in reality they're not. They don't exist in that way. Once one understands that the mind has as its nature the ability to become free from this fundamental kind of mental affliction, the misconception of the self, grasping at it as being real, then one comes to understand that it's possible to become free from that. And once one recognizes that, then one understands that it's possible to achieve a state of complete abandonment of the mental afflictions, a kind of freedom from all of the mental afflictions entirely. That kind of state itself, the total and complete freedom from the mental afflictions to the level of absolute perfection, is itself Buddhahood. And so through that kind of process of inference and reasoning, one understands that Buddhahood is possible, that you yourself can achieve Buddhahood, and that in turn, once you have that understanding, then you have to come to recognize that developing Buddhahood is based upon the production of the bodhicitta, the aspiration to become a Buddha. That in turn depends upon, especially depends upon compassion for others, recognizing the suffering of others, and developing the strong intention to free them from their suffering. That likewise depends upon oneself developing a kind of renunciation towards samsara, understanding what samsara is and developing renunciation of it. If you don't have renunciation of samsara, then there's really no way to develop great compassion, the wish to free others from their suffering. There's a verse which says that if you don't have real renunciation, even in your dreams, then how could you possibly have that kind of renunciation, revulsion towards samsara and the wish to free others from it with respect to other people? And then, so therefore, one has to develop this kind of renunciation as a kind of foundation for the development of all of the other subsequent stages of the path.
Oh yeah, they in that and that castle 现动我今那了没事把给人家结完了，啊你然后可以动啊来，啊你可以拼做了，啊你一就一群结果吧。开完那了，托人那么，人我当中就解决了，时间就把没结棍前呢，我打，现在有个什么那些前呢？我开完那了，俺你托人给拼做了呀，俺你就把结吧。开完那么了，托人讲，人我他从把给，俺你就把结个嘞，人家运动我他从把结。我时间就把没结棍什么那些前呢？我打看说可以拼做他们家。아니 매바이 루당 아니 동아지 라실레 아니 대화를 아니 가서래 되게 라신지 대화 매바 아니 타바 되게 그로데 마치 호래 어 거기 빈소 단제 매바위에다 동아지 라신도 통화 제발라 뒤에라 아니 원도 안송 그 동아라 이주미 집바데 마제 발라 거기 빈소라 이주미 아니 이중 계산명 말이야 인자 토마 아니 난지 동안라 이중이 제대 아니 난로 라 이제네 아니 난지 동안 여러 시위 치도티 아니 여러 시위 아니 온디에 된 루비 치도 아니 미거 줘본 거 치는 수 같은데 좋은 거 아래 인자 좀된 대지양 토마 아니 순들 가나야 가서 디바지양 메시지 개와 필수 차와제 랑기 셈니 용소도 테니산제 땜바인 전에 르마 신도 토마 융하게 녀셔도에 융하게 녀셔도 베거나 미그 줘본 거 쓰는 생활할 때네 아니 취집에 댄상주베 대제라 랑기 셈니 용소도 세가나 니엄바 녀셔도 그냥 원준지 아니 차다 모습 도 발라 티자와 당진 도고와 연장 당진이 어르시 밖에 아니 타바 주죠. 대치도 아니 치도 잡았다. 심정을 두래 탐제 잡아 두야 두스마 우리 마신도 소야 두스 말에.
So therefore, development of renunciation is the foundation for any other subsequent progress on the path or the achievement of any of the higher goals of the path. It's said that in the 400 verses of Aryadeva that a wise person, an intelligent person, is terrified of the pleasures of heaven as much as they're terrified of the torments of hell. So what this means is that the intelligent person comes to realize that any kind of samsaric pleasure is actually of the nature of suffering. And so even the kinds of delightful, wonderful pleasure, that samsaric, contaminated pleasure that a person experiences in heaven, in the various heavens, is completely involved in the samsaric process. Therefore, if someone understands the situation as it actually is, and they're intelligent, they develop a kind of renunciation of that or revulsion towards that, attitude of disgust towards those sorts of contaminated pleasures to the same extent that they have fear of the horrible sorts of sufferings that one experiences in hell. So coming to understand that, one has to develop that sort of renunciation which has that kind of equal revulsion or disgust towards samsaric pleasure as towards samsaric pain. And that's why at the very beginning of the path, the Buddha has taught the avoidance of the 10 non-virtues in order to develop actual renunciation of samsara in its entirety. One first has to gain a recognition of the sufferings of the lower realms of existence and develop sort of revulsion or renunciation of them. And that development of that kind of renunciation of lower suffering of the lower realms is a basis for developing the general renunciation of samsara without first understanding samsaric causality and specifically the sufferings of the lower realms and the causes that give rise to those sufferings of the lower realms, the engaging in the 10 kinds of non-virtuous actions. Then without that first, there's no way to develop the general renunciation of samsara as a whole. So this has basically also been explained in, as the Buddha himself said in a verse, one should never perform any kind of non-virtue, and one should always perfect one's virtue. One should never perform any kind of sinful or negative action, and one should always perfect one's virtue.
Oh, yeah.
And then one should tame one's own mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. This verse appears in the Vinaya and other places. So what this is saying is that the first line of that is talking about the development of renunciation in general, and is specifically referring to the avoidance of the 10 non-virtuous actions, avoiding them, and from things like killing all the way up to and including wrong views and so forth. Then the second line explains that one should tame one's own mind. That refers to the process of developing freedom from samsara, but also especially to the understanding of the wisdom which realizes selflessness, which functions as the direct cause, the direct antidote to the mental afflictions and affects one's freedom from samsara. And then the completion, then that's the teaching of the Buddha. So this verse actually contains implicit within it the entire stages of the path, and especially the emphasis on the first two processes of development of renunciation and achievement of liberation.
Oh, yeah, that tender. 아니 람조 주베 땡 원도당 아니 내리 아니 타바다 타제 주버 제발 체비 내리 제자 체바게 아니 다 이제 청와 아니 고물로 그 제비 이제 청와 그 샬론도 뒤잠 아니 보아 가서 봐봐 아니 가르다기 단조지 댄산 내지 토비 가데 아니 코에 핀조라 마샤와 마게 섬전 담죠 코에 내나 동아 숨제 냠다 봤대나 아니 동안 주단 제와라 자위지 토자라나 바양다바 조외 산제주 과마 토바르차 디치도 아니 세냐바게 다 군용 군적이름 바데지고 하체
So then, before one listens to this kind of instruction, it's important to correct one's motivation or make one's motivation proper. And the way we do that here is by thinking that this instruction of the precious Garland by the Master Nagarjuna contains the entirety of the process of the path, the achievement of all of the different levels and stages of the path, from the basic level of achieving a good type of rebirth to the stage of achieving liberation, up to and including the achievement of the perfect state of omniscience, of Buddhahood. And in order to do that, one has to, one thinks that when I hear this instruction, I should do this so that for my own benefit, but especially for the benefit of all other sentient beings. Think about the various kinds of problems, suffering that all other sentient beings throughout the universe experience, and think that in order to achieve for myself, that I myself may achieve perfect Buddhahood, in order to free all of these other sentient beings from their suffering. Therefore, I'm going to listen to this instruction on the path. You have the text here. So it's Jukures. 자꾸 그래요.
야다. 온도당 내리 줄에 소소 템바 스타 제자지 이제 쌤이 제자 가르에선 온도당 내리 줄에 소소 템바 아니다 이제 남아 차차로 세가나 아니 장골라마 종가와 첨부당 아니 라마 임 차차 이제 랑기 자외라마 남라 차차야 되체 다디니 네가 최제되라 추바줘봐 세람 인지 자와라자 로즈 티세 합산 장비 라와네 타야 잡이 시간 담주 야가 제외 매도 8元钱 티레 장비 대부 초대 두지게 라와 타다 조제바 반대라마 83장저 캐위 캐와텔라 다도 뒤서 디기다 초바테레 라와 디기다 지자 담보 디기 또 안에 또바 편조 된거 임바리 인지 자와 시간라 아니 가서래 这万年级全部，39个级，这万年级全部，我提给早晚上就电话是干了，他们写了米给哪呢？他几家，他贴吧间，这万年级全部的，我说年级长，第一场被抢就给什么？罗这些拉上上边，来往呢这个罗这些话呢，缺了的，那么就给写了了，快月呗，当年都被写了。 提被他别提把上个是个出世界拉上边绕完呢是，他要这边时间提个多把拼作，他拼作当现在拼作做完你些一个了，他些牛的点不钱。
So then the commentary includes the verses also. This is the commentary by Gyaltsab Dhammarinchen. And so we start with the first chapter here, but before entering into the explanation of the text as such, there's some verses of homage that are, and the intention to compose the text and so forth, that are the author's own composition as an introduction. So this first chapter of the basic text, the Precious Garland, the subject matter here is given as the title in the title here, which says an explanation or exposition of the cause and effect or causality pertaining to high status and the highest good. These are the two main topics treated here. And then it begins with an homage to the Reverend Lama, the highly esteemed Lord Guru, and this is in reference to Je Tsongkhapa, who is Gyaltsab Je's principal teacher. And then the verses themselves, verses of homage, begin by referring to the method and wisdom portions of the path. And this verse uses the analogy of the path and the results of the path as being like a great tree. Is the sound okay for you? Yeah, I'm cutting out all of a sudden, or at least if you can hear me, that's okay. Okay, that's good. So it says here, the root of compassion is firm. The tree simile here is that the root of compassion is firm, and so this is referring to the method side of the path. Yeah, thank you. The method side of the path. So compassion is here is referring to specifically great compassion, which takes on is the intention to free all sentient beings from their suffering. And this implicit within this, and that serves as a foundation for the bodhicitta and all of the practices that come out, that are done with bodhicitta, the mind seeking and awakening. So that comprises the entire method side. Then it says the cognition, which is like a cool shadow. Here, the wisdom side of the path is referred to as this wisdom or special cognition, here referring specifically to the wisdom that understands selflessness without non-conceptual realization of emptiness or the direct realization of selflessness. And that's analogous to the shadow, the cool shadow cast by the tree, because it serves as the agent that eliminates the sort of blaze of the mental afflictions. And Laksam Sangpur Rawne.
That is the Taya Chapi Sidian Tamju Yaga gave Medo Bayan Jan said the Taya Bin, and Yambe Chabe, Sijidan Debi, Lundoji Tamju Yaga Yara Chebi, Ani or Yaga gave, Ani Devu Medo Shepherd Bayan Jan said Digi, Ani Sugudango Yabari, Rasugudan, Tedan, Deni, Ani or Chile Pinzodi, Chile Sambi, Debu Chodi, Duji Rewatada, or Ani Rawatata, Zova, Zebaki, and the Pandan Lama Pasanga Shunda, Tsumbi, Kayu Kawatela, Tatu de Segantona, Kasure, Kuginane, Ani Topa Pinzodan, and Chugu Drujiki, Ani Topa Kasa Sanji Chugu Drujeski, Chijukudan, Sugukudan. Ani Ishichu Chile, that is what to stand going by it.
So then the verse continues here saying that this great tree, the tree here is being used as an analogy for the guru or master who the teacher here. And so the verse continues saying that this tree resides within the enclosure of excellent superior intention. This is the superior intention here being the basis for the development of bodhicitta and the achievement of Buddhahood, also on the method side there. Then it says that this tree has the splendor of limitless fame. So if you think of an extremely large and beautiful tree which has great branches and is covered with fruit and so forth, and wonderful, beautiful leaves and so forth, it has this sort of splendor. And so the splendor of this tree is analogous to the fame of the master who is being praised here. Then this tree likewise has the sort of glory of flowers, or splendor also of flowers, of broad spreading branches of the noble Dharma, and it's endowed with the supreme results of excellent activities, the special Buddha activities that function to liberate sentient beings, free sentient beings from their suffering, teaching the Dharma and so forth. So, and that tree, which is the image used for the master here, functions to complete all of the wishes of the disciples. So all of this above is basically referring to the qualities of the freedom that a Buddha possesses. That is, the Buddha has abandoned all of the mental afflictions, as well as the different kinds of obscurations, the affective and cognitive obscurations that prevent omniscience. And on that, so that's on the side of the abandonments, which function to actualize the Dharmakaya, the sort of mental side of Buddhahood. And then the attainment side also comprises both the both the physical bodies of the Buddha, the emanated bodies that appear in the world, in ordinary worlds, as well as the so-called enjoyment body that exists within Buddha fields and pure lands, to interact with bodhisattvas and so forth. So both the attainments and the abandonments of a Buddha, as well as the results of those attainments and abandonments, the kayas or embodiments of Buddhahood, are expressed within this verse. And then, so it says, the final line here is that I always bow down to that master of masters, the splendid Lama, Guru, who is similar to a wish-granting tree. So the special wish-granting tree is able to provide everything that a person requires. And analogous to that, the guru is one who's able to provide all of the aspects of the path as well as the results of the path, the achievement of Buddhahood.
Oh, yeah. That's it. Children draw me by Sejang, combat chodi, Duji Lamni Sala Chene, Segala, Achina, Chita Nagi, Children, turn them by any draw down over me by Sejang. Any castle, combat chodi, Duji Lamni Sata Sanjaji, combat chodi, any or Java Chepi, any or Dujanamji, Yamsulini, Lamni, any or Muslim Sali Chamber.
So then the next verse also continues in bowing down to that here to the second Buddha, and it begins by saying that that although he sees that all phenomena are without coming and going. Here, what that refers to, coming and going, means the things appear and disappear. All phenomena within the world arise and disappear. They come and they go. So what that refers to is that ultimately, because they're devoid of coming and going in an ultimate sense. So though this master sees that, within that supreme state of Buddhahood, the master clearly and specifically or vividly understands the paths that for the disciples. So the paths for the disciples refers here to the different methods and so forth that are to be taught to those to be trained on the various types of paths.
Oh yeah, 这个是为俺都写讲，出去这外都去明白现在情，这个写完呢，领导给这话，咱你那个这话没有把习为，俺都学讲，是吧？习话个。俺什么当把你个俺都学讲，去年的这几年把下边俺都学讲，刚才讲的是吧？出去之外是这出去之外的，俺这把年纪全部给俺卡说的，想完都去了呗，俺都讲南极，俺卡说的，你们把这写起只把拉所谓的毛病明白生活在情是，出去之外都去明白生活情。
tukji dribe suna.
Tuji sena zawa nyingi chimbe shawandu kyube, zawa nyingi chimbo ki tuji le shawandu kyube, ani duja namji, ani momi mimba sede, ani kaasore, nyumbada shiji driba la sawaki, ani momi mimba sewa zaba.
Dribe dis sana kaza di kyu driba yoroba.
So
then the verse here continues that though he has entered into the state, which is the total pacification of all elaboration. Elaboration here, you can construe that in a couple of different ways. It refers to elaborations here, sort of like conceptual or mental elaboration of things as being real. on the one hand, or then the elaboration of things in a sort of dualistic fashion. So the guru here is entered into the state which is completely free from, or in which all of those sorts of elaborations have been entirely eradicated or pacified. So this refers thus to meditative absorption or equipoise in single-pointed meditative concentration on emptiness. One can say it like that. Though the guru has entered into that sort of state, that through the emission of the outflow of his great compassion, still functions and is actually, although the guru has entered into that state of the total pacification of all elaborations, he's still, he or she is still under the sort of controlled by their great compassion. Their great compassion induces them or impels them to emit the various sorts of methods that are necessary to clear away, to dispel the darkness of the disciples, the beings that are to be trained by such a guru.
Oh yeah. Sura jazu nimbo tata seja nimbu teni jibo kona ken jomden deji ani sura jazu taboki ani nimbo tata seja nimbu ten karere sana ani dordunan ani o samotombani ji te kona nimbu te jibo chetamje ge rangsin tomba ani ote sungwa nimbu teni jibo kona ken.
So then likewise the guru here knows solely, it says, solely the essential meaning or essential subject meaning, or you could say object, which is the essence of the entirety of the ocean of scriptures. So it says that though the guru sees the entirety of the different subjects, the essential topics that are found within the ocean of scriptures, he knows them as solely in terms of this essential meaning. Here, the essential meaning is referring again to the essencelessness of things, or the emptiness of things, which is the essence of the entirety of the ocean of scriptures.
Oh yeah. Oh, luru jeni sadin dina drime rabdra sanjani wa tela du se titi luru la choba tiche ro tante shung cheba la thoma gwa ani phadu gwa thama gwa yeba ni sum yeba nane thoma gwa la ani choba da zomba thamjaba ni yebe nane di choba da di tu sin bare.
Then the last line of the second verse says that this one called Nagarjuna, this is an homage to Nagarjuna at the beginning of the text. And it says that this one known as Nagarjuna here upon the earth is renowned without any kind of stain or fault. Without any obscuration, his fame or renown is devoid of any sort of stain. Is the second Buddha. Master Nagarjuna is referred to here as the second Buddha, and I bow down to him. Gyaltsab Dharma Rinchen is written here, and these two verses are the expression of homage to. At the beginning of the commentary here.
사와단 자체와 니가기 아니 저체체바기 시송 마노와다 마주바다 마샤바라 소와기 아니 견 탐자단 차베 랍도 까와 어쩐지 정말 매신 땀도 자와 끈지 초도 좋아 다 꾸와보 담비 까이 런도 꾸와 주외 아니 다른 인터뷰 대중사 제발라 달로 좋아 제세데 아니 샤바 탐자와 두신 말이
So then the last verse here of the three in the at the beginning of the commentary is the promise or the promise to compose the text, the commentary itself. And it says, the first line of that says that his texts or system, you could translate as either way, as referring to Nagarjuna's texts, a scriptural system, is completely pure and stainless. Completely pure and stainless, it can be understood as referring to it's without any kind of fault. It doesn't there are no errors within it, and there's no disorder within it. One can understand the purity and stainlessness here in that way. So then this supreme instruction here is because I've been, and here Gyaltsab Dharma Rinchen is referring to himself, because I've been exhorted by noble persons. Noble persons have, essentially it says, commanded me for a long time to compose this kind of a commentary. Therefore, I will do my best. I'll try to generate enthusiasm to explain this to a small extent. So that verse is the promise to compose the commentary on the text here.
Oh yeah, that demand that 60到就军人学过事了，但大概各位心里就对掉了些呗，但把那接着说切吧，接着说再把下巴当，就把用手这边原点基础框呢框度，去往主要根毛把那么了，他把土地有的再把他来，他开始退化人生了，这就我各位心里框度些呗原点太大的，但把太大了，俺你你在这结束退的是，我国台湾单上部特别推的。 几点根本那么就落来切手臂，几点起码判决就推切不了进去，如果个人是，天马中呢落停着来切马爸爸人是，停着切爸马熊娃人，因为新中年把各位谈就给单了，宁不能把去个人是呀。
So the text, the actual lines, the commentary as such, begins with an introduction which says that with respect to that. My virtuous friends who have been completely concerned with and solely cherish the teaching of the Tathagata, or the Sugata, another name for the Buddha here, have explained this text to me. And in terms of on the practice side of it, understanding that it operates to lead one into a practice to develop in the entirety and completion of the mass of good qualities, and that it serves also to the masters that have taught this to me. I'm sorry, I have to retranslate that. The masters that have taught this to me have practiced the teachings here such that they have developed their host of good qualities to a higher and higher degree, such that they've completely perfected them. And they have, my masters who explain this to me, have especially developed the great compassion, which is concerned with the well-being of living beings that are without any kind of protector. And so I've heard this instruction on the precious Garland from such masters. And then what follows is an explanation of saying that here we, all of us together, have achieved at this moment, at this time, a good kind of life in which we have the freedom to do what we want to do. And if in this kind of condition we don't elevate ourselves above the level of animals, if we don't behave in ways that are superior to that of animals, and such that if we don't accomplish something which has a special kind of meaning, even something which is superior, even within the context of that which is held to be proper kind of behavior and conduct within ordinary worldly people's perspective, if we don't do that, or we merely remain at the level of animals, then it's in the future it's going to be extremely difficult for us to obtain it's essential that we use this opportunity that we have right now to obtain and to take the essence of this kind of a life that we've obtained, a life which is endowed with the freedom and the opportunity to practice, and which is extremely difficult to obtain. Since we've got such a life right now, we need to do what needs to be done to elevate ourselves above the level of mere animals.
Oh yeah, 세디 대화 주바다 동아 세비 탑tam식 아니 던적이야 지교아레스. 인자 다 대자 마인바 아니 다 가르래. 다윗이나 님보시 량고 그래. 님보 간지지래 그래. 사나 자와 세단 제와 탐제지 송비. 그와 아니 송람 채와나 당아서 다좀 된 대당. 아니 대 제수 담배 아니 benru는 지 송바기 아니 흉 채와남 지 된다대다 퇴삼도 퇴와 체네 퇴위 된대다 아니 삼중계 권네 아니 랑게 당화도 샤와지고 그래서 퇴비 된대 삼비 된대 아니 제지도 아니 주배 냥수 lem발라 냥수 lem바 된대 주고 그래서 냥수 lem발라 초도 교하기 아니 야와제와기 아니 쳐바시야요 말에
So, and then how do we do that? We've achieved a life right now in which we're free to do what we want to do. We're not constrained as such that we can't do what we want to do. If we use this kind of opportunity, this momentary opportunity, simply to fill our stomachs and achieve temporary happiness for the moment, then we haven't really done anything which distinguishes us from animals. Animals have some ability to do that kind of thing. So having this kind of opportunity at this moment, it's essential that we do something to distinguish ourselves from a mere animal kind of existence. So how do we do that? The best way to do this is to, at the moment, we've gained this kind of opportunity where we can hear the teachings of the Buddha, and we're also able to understand that all of the scriptures and the systems, these great methods that have been taught by the victorious Buddhas as well as their sons and daughters. Here, sons and daughters refers to the bodhisattvas as well as all of the great masters of the past that have followed the teachings of the Buddhas. All of those noble beings have shown how all of the teachings of the Buddhas should appear to us as personal instructions, not merely as some kind of abstract or intellectual subjects, but rather that they should appear as practical methods for us. And then if one understands how all of the teachings are instructions designed for ourselves, then if we practice single-pointedly attempt to accomplish those instructions, practice them, and from that kind of practice that we strive to achieve, that is itself the highest form of worship which pleases the victorious Buddhas. That's the best kind of offering or worship of them.
Oh yeah, 대다위 된다 공주 시와 나신 자리 대위 송아 탐제 당화도 샤네 아니 삼네 제주도 냠수 주바 냠수 렘바 텔라양 냠수 렘바라야 아니 렘베 때 온두르데 캬바르젠 데네 쳇디네 제리 온두 때 렘바 신두바 규데 아니 타바라 타게 집에 남주고와 인장 아니 저와 예비 가서래 치진도 주요 온디 가서 남대다 냠수 렘발라 당 온도 땡쳐봐 필수서와지요와 인장 아니 렘비 땡 온디 제 쳐봐지 대당 땡텔라르마 신도 아니 냠수 렘바베 내래 탐제 쳐봐 줘봐 타바다 탐제 쳐봐 줘봐기 아니 공방 토바를 쳐봐기 다 온도 주제다 내래 주제 니오데 아니
So then, the Dharma that's expressed in this this treatise, this text here, the precious Garland, is explaining just that. That is the practices by which one first ensures that one is able to achieve an excellent kind of life in the next life. At the moment, we have a good life, but we want to ensure that in the next life we achieve an equal or even superior, ideally a superior kind of life. And this life that we're striving for is not just for pleasure or worldly happiness, but rather is a kind of foundation or basis by which we can continue to progress and improve over the course of all of our subsequent lifetimes. That is, in our next life, we achieve a good life. That serves as a foundation for continued practice. Then, in the life after that, we'll be able to get even better and better. And so the process of the path is just that you have to try to improve yourself in the present so that you'll be able to continue to improve yourself over the course of your next lives. The ultimate objective here is the achievement of liberation and then ultimately omniscience, Buddhahood. But those kinds of goals are the ultimate objectives or sort of the ultimate objectives of the overall process of development that you're engaging in at the present. So this kind of process of improvement and the achievement of a good life in the next life as a platform or basis for continued improvement is the subject matter of the text we're studying here, the precious Garland.
Oh yeah, da kan xiaba de la, yin chen wa ge xie bi on zhe dang, xiaba on ni ye bi na ne, xie bi on zhe de la, ne dan zhe ba bi che wa, ane pa pa lu zhu jie wa, ane zhen den de ge, ane long ge sim ba,是吧？所以比对有的呢，ane ha sa le。半天写下吧，他们都写白把的，我一点把几点钟，俺那啥都干月3点，在台湾见到太早，我是他录住，俺那开始的，龙天的就龙写把了，啷个写把当， 도대 정 쳐보다 뭐지 도다 아니 잠바자지 소가다 룽 콘도 시다 룽아 쪽지기 나라 아니 가소래 좀 된데 그 롱대요 봐 된다 나가 집에 가서나 아니 소주 비디 이제니 가서 소주 비디 이제니 근데 버거는 반대 시작와 태민루 시배바데 에세요 많이 담바 직된도 로니 시작을 바나서 등안이 이더라도 전에 대화체제 소주고 세다디 로직 된줄 때서 민자와 여봐先把几把银把的转撒当아니 사라도 가와토디 아니 봐 아니 로자주 lem바 생야지 와르 로자 인자 로자 lem바 세야지 전에 철로 제위티 좀 된대지 아니 가소래 루주 코랑 디로 철로라 마치바 제전에 아니 두자서 그래 아니 잠불린 게미 전에 철로 제위티라서 전체 송에서 송도 요아래 다 간제 된다 좀 된대지 롱은 바 인바다 데마송도와 저 비디 유도네 그런 반대 세자와 나이 데만 데밀루시 배바데 나이 담바 지단도 라도 가베 사접데 다와찬도 테주오 세데 오디기 아니 다 롱데마부터 요아체
So then, the Dharma that's taught here then is the way in which one progresses to the highest state, to the ultimately to the highest state, which is the state of highest good. But as a prerequisite for that, one first has to ensure that one achieves high status, a good kind of life in the next life. Once you achieve that good kind of life in the next life, that's the basis for the progression, eventually leading to liberation and the omniscience of Buddhahood. So this text, the title of it is called the Madhyamaka Ratnavali in Sanskrit, or the precious garland of the middle way, and it's the instruction which is taught here clarifies and explains the entirety of the path leading to these temporary and ultimate sort of goals that one's after. So then there's a number of subheadings that we enter into as the commentary progresses. There's preparation for the explanation of the text. Here in the commentary, that has two parts. An expression of the greatness of the author of the treatise, and then the presentation of the actual treatise which was composed by that author. Then the first of these topics, the greatness of the author of the treatise, it says that his name is Venerable Nagarjuna. And that's the name that he's, or Venerable Arya Nagarjuna, to give the whole title there. His name is Nagarjuna. And he was prophesied to show his greatness. Gyaltsabje cites a number of different sutras as well as a tantra commentary that refer to the prophecies of Nagarjuna. In a number of different sutras, for example, in the Lankavatara Sutra, in the Mahamegha Sutra, the Mahabhari Sutra, and the Manjushrimula Kalpa, there are several different sutras in which the Buddha prophesied the appearance of the Master Nagarjuna. And especially, I think, in the Lankavatara Sutra, it said that the Buddha said that after I have passed away, 400 years after I passed away, a youth by the name of Sriman will appear in the southern region of Vaidarbha, and he will come to be known as Naga, which is short for Nagarjuna. And he will greatly spread my doctrine. So that prophecy in the sutra there shows that Nagarjuna was prophesied by the Buddha, and you have that in a number of different sutras as well. That sutra continues that after Master Nagarjuna has greatly spread the teaching of the Buddha that he'll accomplish the level of the first bodhisattva stage called the extremely joyous or pramudita stage of the first bodhisattva stage, and then we'll go on to Sukhavati, the Pure Land of Amitabha. And so there's that prophecy in that sutra. And then in the Clear Lamp text, it's a commentary, it's said that the Master Nagarjuna will extensively teach the path of unexcelled yoga tantra during the latter part of his life, and will achieve the stage of Vajradhara at the end of his life. So there are various kinds of prophecies, and if you look at them sort of superficially, it looks like there's some disparity among the different prophecies, but basically they can be coordinated such that there's no contradiction among them. Rather, the way it's generally understood is that the prophecies that you find in the sutras are referring to events in the early part of the Master Nagarjuna's life, whereas the prophecy that you find in the Clear Lamp or Radiant Lamp commentary is referring to events that occurred towards the latter part, in the latter part of Master Nagarjuna's life. He did different activities in different phases of his life.
Oh yeah, that digi luruki zababi chawade da luru kasore tu lungsoson dososon lungun dentu da tu de chimbache. Taniwa ti zabi denju ki namsha tela an luruki ani jowa jaba la sowa ribi nenga tumo bi denju mambo jayowa. Ta na riba la nga dan paru chimba la demba mambo jayo nga kana ya ani sawan du ba ki rewa to cheta ani do se la sowa te yor ta sawo umi lam dembi ani do de nam ngewi ten tu ngai den tu ba tang ta du ji ba tu tu bu nam sha jawa demba o de re ta do ku la tu ba se de ani ngai den tu ba umi lam demba de ngai den tu ba tang o lungu tu ba de te kwana lungu tu ba de la ani do ku la tu ba Samu tombani lungu kwana tu ba de la do ku la tu ba ma se ribi kwana tu ba de la ani oma ribi cho tu za ba xie ra riba chu ju wa zhen do doni du ju wa ximo nam da tang ani dan ju di se le ren ji chwa nam da ba ba.
So then that's an indication, a mention, or sort of indication of the greatness of the author of the precious Garland, Master Nagarjuna. The fact that he was prophesied by the Buddha shows that he was an authority for the teaching. And then in terms of the next subject here in the introduction to the commentary's introduction, is referring to the texts or treatises that were composed by that master Nagarjuna. So as far as the compositions of Master Nagarjuna, he composed a number of different texts which pertain to sort of common subjects, that is things on medicine, alchemy and so forth, such as the 100 text dealing with medical treatment. He composed things dealing with sort of scientific subjects that are common to both Buddhists and non-Buddhists and used by both, actually. And then with respect to the inner science referring especially to Dharma, the achievement of the subject matter that we're dealing with here, Master Nagarjuna wrote, I should say, many different texts which deal with both the mantra side as well as the perfection side of the path. On the mantra side, he composed texts having to do with the Griya Samaja system, as well as other Vajrayana or Tantric texts. And then on the perfection side here, he wrote other kinds of treatises as well. Then with respect to the sutras which teach the Madhyamaka path, the path of the middle way from the sutra perspective. Here, teach the profound middle way. He composed the Compendium of Sutras. It's an anthology of sutra extracts, which extensively shows how, on the one hand, the sutras which teach the path of the profound middle way are to be established in the sense of a definitive meaning. That is, that such sutras are to be understood as a being of a definitive intention. And likewise, within the Sutra Samuccaya, the compendium of sutra quotations, he also established that there's one final vehicle within the Buddhist tradition. So that explains the different parts of the path extensively. Then turning to the text that he composed, which establish the profound path of the middle way by means of reasoning, he composed the Basic Wisdom, that's first text, then 60 verses, the refutation of arguments, and the 70 verses on emptiness, and then also the it's called the Vaidalya Sutra or Vaidalya Prakarana. It's sometimes translated as finely woven text, and then that's 5, and then he also composed this treatise here, the Precious Garland. So those 6 are usually counted as the 6 treatises on reasoning, explaining the path of the middle way from the point of view of reasoning that the Master Nagarjuna composed.
Oh yeah, that in Tanya Juba Umagenji Devar, Tija Kaya Chamba Mado study, Tada Majua Chen. Doba Gashi Lejang, Tony Dam Mejang, and the Ribe Juba Tesamiman last time. So the career Tony Ribe Jubala, repeat so Dimbi, Danger Tetajan Duna, Ritu Chubo de Duna, then you get a corner you saw Dambatang. Tatra Tobi, Lamji, Koala Trovi, and Koala Trova, so Damba Isutua.
So then there's another text, it's called The Establishment of Conventional Things. That's only exists in a few scattered partial quotations that are found in a commentary on the Ornament to the Middle Way, that text. So because that text in effect was not, basically other than those scattered quotations, partial quotations, was not translated into Tibetan in its entirety, was not transmitted to Tibet. And then also, although it's the case that some of the hymns or praises that were composed by Nagarjuna, Master Nagarjuna, they do teach emptiness, but they don't do so to the same to a great extent establishing emptiness by means of reasoning. So when one looks at those hymns or praises that the Master Nagarjuna composed, they do teach emptiness, but not so much using reasoning to establish it logically and rationally. Then, with respect to the treatises that Master Nagarjuna composed that do teach the entire whole collection of reasoning to establish emptiness, if you sort of subdivide them or subsume them into 2 categories, you find that these treatises that teach the entirety of the collection of reasonings explain 2 topics. Those that primarily or principally teach the reality which is dependent origination, and then those which principally teach the method for achieving liberation from samsara by means of the path which understands reality free from the two types of extremes. So those two subdivisions.
Oh yeah, that thing, 가서래 땡중고 대권한이 做된발라. 아니 다 같이래 리조든서. 왜나 가서 오바마와 남지. 오바마와 하잖아. 라신지 주변 오바마와 대바 주변 오바마와나 오바마와 다 전지 오마란지바 만제 오바마와서 지당 오바마와서 대바 주변 오바마와서나 아니 년된 된이당 semzam bachana demba obomawas demba tuyong obomawas khoche de ko ta rashi ji tuyong obomawa chasona ani oma ranju baya obomawa na tunji jogo are demba tu tanju bachana odenza obomawa namji tabi obomawa namji tabi ani juja le chebabo kansadang kansa kanla dana tabi dashi phumbo de 라시지 주와 고바 안에 자와셔를 그나서 고바데 라시 주와 고바데 자와셔르체 디 주비제 아니 가서를 고야데라 아니 시원한다.
So then regarding the first of these categories, that is the text that Master Nagarjuna composed, which principally teach the reality of dependent origination. Here, the subject here is with respect to the refutation of things being established by means of their intrinsic nature. Here, it's talking especially about the aggregates of the person as well as the aggregates. Persons and aggregates subsume basically everything that exists. So those, the person and the aggregates being established by means of their own intrinsic nature. That sort of proposition or thesis is imagined by those who are called realists. Here, a realist is someone who asserts that things exist by means of their own intrinsic nature. So from that point of view, we can say that, of course, non-Buddhists are realists because they assert that things exist by means of their own intrinsic nature, are real in that sense. And likewise, even within the Buddhist systems of philosophy, we would have to say that, of course, the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika schools assert that things are real in the sense of being established by means of their own intrinsic nature. But even the Yogacara or consciousness school, as well as even the autonomous Madhyamika school, the Swatantrika Madhyamika, we would have to say from that perspective, would be categorized as realists. So in the basic wisdom text of Master Nagarjuna, he has presented extensive refutations that of the proposition that things exist by means of their own intrinsic nature, that the aggregates and the person exist by means of their own intrinsic nature. He has extensively negated the theses propounded by all of the realists, including even the Buddhist realists.
Oh yeah. 가서래 두제 또그 치된 주주 고바데 시몬 남다체. 다 전도당 돈이 된주와디 전도대 라시 매자 자체 타체. 돈이 된주와데 라시지 매자 자체 타주 치된 발라 돈이 된주와 잡아리. 다데 인자 내가 전도당 돈이 된주와 니 자와셔를 최위 양라자민지 우밀단지 그 유용소 접에 단지 ranjawa 많이 봐.
So then, with regard to the other compositions here within the category of the texts that principally teach the reality of dependent origination, the text which is called the Vaidalya Prakarana, or Vaidalya Sutra sometimes, finely woven, sometimes translated. This text primarily deals with the negation of the 16 categories of things which are posited by logicians. And then with respect to so there's sort of subtle forms of fallacious reasoning that are posited by philosophers when they're attempting to establish that things exist by means of their own intrinsic nature. And for example, if you take avenues of valid cognition, methods of knowledge, there are types of proofs that attempt to establish valid cognition as though it were as being established by means of its own intrinsic nature. In the Vaidalia's Prakarana text, those sorts of propositions are negated, as well as 15 or 16 other topics that that different philosophers present. Then when we turn to the refutation of arguments text, as well as the 70 verses on emptiness, those two are basically excurses, that is, they take off from and they elaborate upon topics which are treated within the basic wisdom text. The Mula Madhyamaka Karikas, the basic wisdom text, covers so many subjects, and there's a couple of them that Master Nagarjuna discusses in more detail or explicates some of the implications of things which he only mentions within the basic wisdom. So the 70 verses on emptiness, as well as the refutation of arguments, rebuttal of arguments, those two texts are simply auxiliaries to the basic wisdom text, which is the primary text that teaches the entire body of the path of the middle way.
Oh yeah, that's it. That's just what I did. 주도만 좀 오원남지 라신이 그라 예면에 취지 최자 라신 매세 가정 오원 탐제지 라신 그라 예면에 취지 최자 라신 매세네 천나 라신 예면에 아니 양 라신 이와 말서 아니 저발라 아니 대란 가줄라서 왜 체제 탐제 밑에 저발라 아니 되게 량 아니 송하인 바래.
So then, with respect to the first text we mentioned, of those last two, the rebuttal of arguments, refutation of arguments text. There's a verse out of the basic wisdom text which says that if the basic gist of it is that the opponent here is saying, if your words don't possess intrinsic nature, then your words, your statements are not able to refute my argument. So the opponent here has the assumption that if words or statements, arguments and so forth don't have some kind of intrinsic nature which enables them to establish and negate things, then there's no way to do any kind of argumentation, any kind of discussion at all or argument at all. So in the refutation of arguments here, the Nagarjuna's composition that expands upon this point, he says that he comes back and says that it's because my words are without any kind of intrinsic nature that they're able to actually affect the negation or refutation of your claims. So basically, he turns the opponent's position on itself and demonstrates that it's simply the fact that words and arguments and statements are devoid of any kind of intrinsic nature, that they actually have the ability to establish things and to refute things. It's that sort of quality of language which enables it to function, to prove and to disprove various things.
Oh yeah, that didn't only do what I did. 가서 자체들 송야 요아래 아니 demba mejan chache taju chik tembala toni tunjuwa sungo ware ta di khali chogo ware sana ani rabji dimbi milam chishin juma shin sewa tege che tamja milam da juma shin do ranshin ji matu ba temba de la jene ji so ranshin ji chuwa ka ba de ani lung de ge jene ji ranshin ji chuwa ka ba de lung ge tem mare se ani o ma be go we lando ani toni tunjuwa ta ba imbare.
So then the second of those two texts we were discussing, the 70 verses on emptiness, that takes off from the verse section in the 7th chapter of the basic wisdom text, where it says that things are like dreams, or they're like magical illusions. And in that discussion, Master Nagarjuna has said that all phenomena are like magical illusions. They appear out of causes and conditions and they disappear. And similarly, like a dream, they appear to be real, but they're not real, just as the things or phenomena that appear to us in dreams don't exist in the way they appear. Likewise, ordinary everyday phenomena appear to be real, but they're not real in the way that they appear to us. So the opponent here says that if the arising and the endurance and the disappearance or disintegration of things was not real, then that would contradict sutra statements where the Buddha has stated that things arise, they exist for some period of time, and then they disappear. So it seems to the opponent that if things arise and stay for a little bit and then they disappear, they have to, that arising and remaining and disappearing has to be real, or else it couldn't exist at all. And therefore the Buddha's statements that things exist, they appear and exist and disappear, would be contradicted by Nagarjuna's claim that things are like a dream or like magical illusions. So in that text, here, the 70 verses on emptiness, he shows that the Master Nagarjuna gives a reply, an expansion upon his reply to the opponent there, which establishes things as being like dreams and magical illusions.
Oh, yeah,
We'll stop there for today.
de